I kind of didn't know when I was going to hit my idea. Um, and it kind of, the conclusion that I came to was just like, you just have to keep working on it until you just stop caring.
Welcome back to the Clean Techies podcast, where we interview ClimateTech founders and VCs to discuss all things building and investing to solve the biggest challenge of our generation, climate change. Today we had a really fun, but also impactful and very transparent conversation, one that is slightly different than a lot of guests we've had on, someone who is a lot earlier in her journey of building her company. I wanted to have her on as an opportunity to showcase the life of someone deep in the grind of building their startup with the hope to one day make a massive impact on climate change. There are so many startup founders out there in the midst of building their projects, and certainly there can be moments of doubt and uncertainty. We wanted to have today's conversation to show you that you are not alone, and you are not the only person with those feelings of uncertainty and insecurity. Hopefully it's a bit of encouragement and grounding to reality, so you remember that nothing is perfect and everyone is out there figuring it out just like you. Today's episode is with Alina Liu, who is the founder of Disco, a Chrome extension that shows a resale option for the product you're currently looking at. I encourage you to reach out to Alina and connect with her. To any founders listening, it's also important that you all support each other so we can help solve climate change together. With that, let's get into the show. All right. Welcome to the show. How's it going?
It's great. Thanks for having me, Silas.
Yeah, I'm super excited to have this. We've obviously been able to speak before and collaborate a little bit before, but pretty excited to do this. So let's just start with the beginning. Give us a bit of an intro to yourself and kind of your backstory and what you're doing today.
Yeah, so my name's Alina Liu. Where to start? I guess I grew up in Lexington, Massachusetts, went to college at Cornell and studied operations research and information engineering. And since then, I've been working just in a lot of tech. So my background and career so far has been primarily in software technology. And so I worked at Microsoft, Dropbox, Scale AI before starting my own company, and with a short stint in pursuing painting and visual arts actually for a year, which was great. And then, yeah, about 2 years ago, started pursuing creating my own company first with this company that I called No Waste Club, which was essentially a gifting platform, like a free peer-to-peer gifting platform where you could share your items with your community members in your neighborhood for free. And that was really, really fun. I spent a long time on that, maybe too long on it, and then decided it wasn't really the right model and wasn't really working out. And so pivoted around a bunch and then finally landed on Disco, which is what I'm working on today. And Disco is a Chrome extension that pops up with pre-loved items while you're shopping for clothing online.
Very good. So how did you get interested? I mean, I'm looking at your LinkedIn. When you say you got a background in tech, it's very, very big tech type of companies and
Right.
big
Yeah.
names. So what led you specifically to be interested in climate? How did I saw you do the on deck program. So could you tell us more about how you got there?
Yeah, that's a really fair question. Yeah, I agree. When you look at my background, it's kind of like, how did you get here? Um, I think it really was just during the pandemic. I had, along with most other people, just had so much time on my hands and so much more time than I was used to. And so that kind of allowed a lot more space to explore my interests. And I found myself just gravitating towards climate all the time. Like I was constantly looking it up, researching it. I think in the back of my mind, when I didn't have as much time, it was just always a curiosity of mine. And I knew that it was something that I wanted to look into, but then just didn't really have a lot of time to. Um, but then I guess if you like pedal backwards a little bit, looking back, it's likely that my cultural background had an impact as well. I grew up Chinese American. My parents grew up pretty poor in China. We grew up okay, but how that manifested in my personal upbringing was just, like appreciating everything that we had and really trying to make sure that we weren't wasting. And so that involved a lot of reusing jars and containers, a lot of repairing old items, not buying very much. Um, and my mom gardens, has a huge garden in our backyard and raises chickens. So, it provides a lot of sustenance for us as a family. Um, and we feed the chickens leftovers. So, it's just like a very kind of backyard circular economy already. And so I think that probably just like had a big impact on how I think about the world and my personal consumerism.
Hey there. Quick break to remind any founders or VCs listening, if you are looking for deal flow, seeking to raise funding, looking for partners to help service your needs, or perhaps you're looking for corporate investment partners, feel free to reach out to us through our Slack channel, which can be found in the description. Because we meet a lot of people in this space, we set aside time each week to make introductions to the various people that we encounter. This is something we do free of charge in order to help these incredible companies solving climate change to scale. Looking forward to hearing from you in the Slack channel. Maybe I'm wrong, but I thought when we originally spoke, you mentioned also something around kind of looking around you and seeing that you had accumulated a lot of things and had this
Oh yeah.
interest. I was keen to go back to
Yeah.
that.
Yeah, I guess like very much more directly as a like as it regarded No Waste Club was during the pandemic. I also did move and I did accumulate a ton of stuff. And my partner and I were kind of trying to get rid of a bunch of stuff because we were around it all the time, just being working from home. Um, and it was just really difficult to get rid of it. It felt really, really bad. We were trying to, like get rid of like an old desk and it like could probably just be fixed. It's just a little bit rickety, but we didn't want to throw it away. It felt so bad. And like old DVDs that someone would probably appreciate and like clothes that someone would probably appreciate. And so we kind of went on this whole crusade to just like look for people to give it to. And we happened upon the Buy Nothing group, which is an incredible organization. They're just like so awesome. And I think they tenfolded during the pandemic. Um, they just grew astronomically. And uh yeah, we ended up just giving our stuff away to people in our neighborhood. And like it was just like the best experience ever. It was like, thank you so much for taking our stuff. We felt so bad throwing it away. And then they were like, wait, why are you thanking me? You're literally giving me free useful stuff. And so it was just like this really great win-win situation. Um, and that's kind of like, I guess like the more direct spark of like me working on No Waste Club was just trying to like spread Buy Nothing's word even further, basically.
Hmm.
Um, and yeah, I guess that is like the more direct
Hmm.
causation. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's interesting to see some of these particular things. That is obviously not the necessarily the topic of the show. It's kind of tangential, but there's so many, especially Americans. I'm sure other countries as well, but Americans have so much stuff,
Hmm.
and I forget the specific number of items each person has in their house, but it's crazy. I mean, I think about just looking around my tiny New York apartment. When I moved here, I moved to New York with 3 suitcases, and I definitely have more than 3 suitcases worth of stuff now. It's easy for it to pile up. I think there's a show. I think there's a Netflix show called Minimalism on that. If people are interested
Mm.
in living with fewer things, but I'm keen to go into. So you made this decision that you want to work on climate. You had a. It seems like you had a pretty good job. No reason to leave it necessarily, but you still decided to do this. So could you talk about what we talk about what made you make the change, but really the mindset of having to go through that idea of, okay, should I leave my 9 to 5? Is there what were you worried about when you launched into that? And talk
Mm.
through the beginning stages of actually going and starting the company, and maybe some of the ideas that you threw out, just that whole process.
Mm. Yeah, I would say it's a good question. I think it kind of slowly grew over time. But I guess like one really pivotal moment, like I had a lot of fun working at the scale of the last job I guess I was at. Um, And I think the kind of pivotal moment was like scale was growing so quickly. And I've always kind of had this thing where I always found myself wanting to do more and to try out different things and be creative with my solutioning, but always ended up feeling pretty suffocated, getting pigeonholed and specialized into a specific solution type. So for me in particular, I was working on a lot of analytics, whereas like I wanted to like think about new products and like new ideas and that type of thing. And didn't always feel like I had the opportunity to in the spot that I was at. And I had this inkling feeling that I wanted to start a company from pretty early on. I can't really point to a specific moment in time, but I think it hit a moment where scale was growing so quickly that our team was getting very much pigeonholed into into like a very specific specialized function. Um, and I was kind of deciding, okay, do I want to stay and trying to like move into a different role, or do I just want to go start that company now? And I guess I kind of just decided now was the time. There was no other better time. I think a lot of people wait until, they've gained enough experience or they like feel ready, but I kind of don't think you'll ever feel ready, and because you just don't know what challenges or holes you're gonna or blockers you're gonna encounter until you meet them. And so it's kind of like you have to. I just don't think you're like people are ever gonna be ready. um, yeah. So then I kind of just decided to bite the bullet and start working on it myself. And then yeah, I think some of my worries, I mean, there's definitely the financial worries. Um, but if you think about it, if you like kind of track, I think the financial worry was probably the number one worry. I think there sometimes was this worry like, oh, what if it doesn't work out and I can't get another job? But I just don't think that's true, because when you're needing to own everything about your startup, you're gaining a lot more skills than you typically would in a in like your typical 9 to 5 job. And so I think you're actually way more employable after your startup fails. And so I didn't think that was really a problem. And then on the financial end, like I had saved up some, and I guess like I had done enough monthly financial planning of my own to know like, okay, I could keep my costs down pretty low. Let's say it was like 3 to 4K a month. And like for some people that's obviously not feasible, but for me it was at the time. And so that's like 36K to 48K a year, which is a lot, but it's not as much of a financial burden as people usually think it is. Um, and yeah, it's like hard to cut corners and stuff, but I think it's worth it. Yeah.
Hey there. Are you building a climate tech business and looking for very specialized talent? Consider reaching out to our sponsors, NextWave Partners. NextWave are experts in talent acquisition, recruitment, and retention across the climate tech, renewables, and ESG spaces globally. So if your team is growing or you're looking to make a career change yourself, feel free to reach out to NextWave at next-wavepartners.com or reach out to one of their consultants directly via their LinkedIn page. Yeah, I mean, it goes back to that mindset of using what you need, right? If you can kind of live a certain different type of life, or at least kind of live below your means per se, then it's a little bit easier. This is something I find interesting. It's kind of outside of just particularly in climate, but a lot of people tend to have, I think it's called usually referred to as lifestyle creep. As you continually
Mm-hmm.
make more money, you get a bit bigger apartment, you have more expenses, and you get a nicer car or whatever. And as a result, you essentially have bronze or golden handcuffs, depending on how you want to look at it. And you don't have the flexibility to make a change, right? So, I mean, maybe for people listening, if if they have an interest in building a business, consider that. Keep your expenses low as long as you can, and save the extra money so that when time comes, it's not like a big adjustment. Um, Very cool. That's really interesting to hear. I appreciate you sharing that. Could you talk to us about the actual process? Because it sounds like you had an idea for the No Waste Club. You mentioned to me before that you had other ideas you tried. Could you talk to us through how you iterated on an idea? What did you use as baseline to evaluate it? And then when did you throw it in the trash to go on to another thing? What was that process
Mm.
like?
It wasn't a really methodical process, to be honest. It was, yeah, I remember our previous conversation. I guess like if I were to break it down though into steps, it would be like when I first started thinking about it, I kind of just gave myself a lot of space to wander and think and like let myself kind of go down internet holes, just naturally gravitate towards things. And I would keep a spreadsheet um, of just like ideas that came up. So some of the ideas that came up were like a like pads and tampon subscription box with fun self-care items called that time of month. Or like a thread up for things you don't know how to throw away responsibly, like chargers and wires and batteries, or like trash cans that weigh trash recycling and compost bins by weight and volume at corporations so they can keep track of like how much waste they're producing. Um, and then like other non non-sustainability stuff too. Like an event space booking app or like a laundry machine that washes and dries in one. But just like random ideas, like terrible, a lot of them terrible ideas. Uh, and just like the more the better. Just generate terrible ideas, just get them all out there, um, and then after like a month or two, I had like a list of like 50 to 60 ideas, and then picked like which one I was most excited about. Um, and then so I actually started out on that like pads and tampon subscription box for that called for women or menstruating people that called that time of month. And I stopped working on it because as I continued to research it, I found that um, menstrual cups are way more sustainable and that my business model was completely dependent on something that was going to be bad for the environment essentially. So that's when I decided to stop working on that. And then there was another idea that I had that was basically like a productivity tool for structured brainstorming. And I was really, really excited about it for maybe like 2 weeks. And then I just was like, wait, I don't really care about this. And so I think it's just like, I was like, I had this idea like that I would just, yeah, I kind of didn't know when I was going to hit my idea. Um, and it kind of, the conclusion that I came to was just like, you just have to keep working on it until you just stop caring. And that's like when you know when like the right time to stop is. So that's just like not really a great answer, I think. But like, I guess if I were to distill it down into a suggestion, it would be try to find out as much about the thing as possible. Um, and just like get yourself exposed to as much of the problem space as possible such that you can like have enough information to be able to say, do I still care? And then decide to continue or not.
I think that's actually a pretty good answer, to be honest. I think just maybe to restate what you said there was there's a couple things you mentioned is generate all the ideas, the good and the bad ones. Don't be, don't judge against the ideas, just throw them all out there. I think this is similar to something I heard Ed Sheeran say once. He was talking about his art and how, it's like you turn on a dirty tap, it's never been run, and it starts out being really rusty at the beginning, and then eventually over time with practice it gets cleaner and cleaner, right? And you may have a speck of bad, rusty water here and there, but eventually it's pretty clear. And I think that that's a really, I mean, obviously building a company is commercial, there's a lot of things to it, it's technical, but it's also an art in some way, right? And so I think this is really, I think it's actually quite a good answer. One thing I'd be keen to, while we're on this topic, is when you're looking back, you mentioned it wasn't necessarily a structured process. Do you have advice
Mm-hmm.
that you would offer other people who are going through this process, who they're about to say, hey, you know what, fuck it, I'm gonna go do something on my own, but I don't necessarily know what it is, but here's your advice for them.
Yeah. I think my number one, hmm, I think my like top suggestions would be to try as much as possible to foster a growth mindset. Um, and to just like start getting out there, just start trying things. I think like there's so much imposter syndrome involved, just like so much. And I think it's helpful to have a growth mindset because what it says is like it's going from, oh, I'm really bad at this to, oh, interesting, I'm bad at this today, but it's okay because I'll be better tomorrow. And then in that way, it's like really motivating to be like, okay, I haven't figured it out today, but that's fine. Like I'll be better tomorrow, and it'll keep you going, it'll keep you trying things, and it'll keep you creative. Um, and I think like like growing and fostering your own motivation is like one of the hardest things to do in doing this startup. So I think fostering growth mindset is one. Um, and then I think the second thing was just getting out there and trying things. I think I'm just like it is really hard to be methodical and structured because you just don't know what you don't know. And so it's kind of just like just get out there and experience a bunch of randomness and information, collect a bunch of information, and then try to collate and structure, create structure out of that. And you just don't know what you're going to get.
Hey there, thanks for listening to this episode. If you made it this far, it's likely that you're enjoying the show, so I wanted to ask your help. If you're enjoying it, please give us a review on Apple Podcasts and share with somebody in the same industry who might find this interesting. And if you're interested in getting summaries of these episodes, go subscribe to our newsletter that comes out on LinkedIn and Substack. Links can be found in the description. Thanks for your help in growing the reach of this show.
Um, and then I think in a somewhat similar vein to the growth mindset one, I guess, like kind of thinking about feedback as a gift. Um, Maybe a gift isn't the right word, but any feedback is helpful. So like there will definitely be haters and people who tell you that your product sucks and what you're doing sucks. But and not necessarily to be helpful, but it's still a great utility. They're if they're shitting on your product, like, hey, they're still usually giving you great information that you can then use. And so it's still powerful to just get them to keep talking and keep telling them why they think your product sucks. Because like there's probably a nugget in there somewhere, and you can throw away half of what they're saying, but there probably is some useful information there. And like I genuinely believe like information is power. So like if the more information you can collect and distill down, it's still like really helpful.
Yeah, I think that's interesting. I mean, there's this obviously people who have the ego, if you will, to become an entrepreneur. No offense meant to any entrepreneurs.
It's okay.
They tend to have sometimes an idea that, hey, if you don't like my idea, well, screw you. It's, that's too bad. My idea is great. But it's important to remember that, like you said, if they're not enjoying the product, if there's a reason for that, there is a reason behind that. So look into it. There's a book I was recommended once called The Mom Test, to basically make sure you're not just asking your mom for feedback on the product, because she'll probably say it's great. You got to ask
Yeah,
people, and
definitely.
and you got to go past that first level of, hey,
Yeah.
chase your dreams, it'll be great. um Very cool. So one thing, we can go to, I think we can go now to disco and getting disco launched. So talk to us the beginning of that, and then as you built, how did it feel to get some of the small wins, but that process of building would be really great to hear.
Yeah. So disco was pretty roundabout getting there, honestly. Like I tried so many different things. Um, like I guess it started out from No Waste Club, the peer-to-peer gift economy app. And then I tried out, like building a sustainable 1-800 Got Junk, where we'd pick up your stuff and figure out what to do with it and try to be sustainable with it. Or like a service to help find secondhand items for you, where we'd search by hand. And then it was like testing an extension that popped up on Amazon with similar items from Facebook Marketplace and Craigslist. And then so it was kind of like a wiggle around, and then ultimately landed on Disco as it is now, which is the Chrome extension for resale clothing. And yeah, it was like it was really, really just pieced together step by step. It's like um I had basically I'm solo founding, and so it was, and I'm not 100% technical. I would say I would call myself pseudo technical. So I kind of like asked a couple of friends for favors to help me like figure out how to architect the thing, um, and just like like did little hackathons with them. Um, had like paid an Upworker to build out the front end, and then since then, just like getting the pieces, the architecture together, have just kind of like been junior coding my way around the rest of it. And then just trying to launch. I mean, I think the biggest challenge so far has just been launching and going to market. Like I really underestimated, I think like classic San Francisco mistake, but like I really underestimated um like how difficult and important go to market was. And so that was like, I think, and it is like kind of an emotional thing as well. Like I didn't realize that I was dragging my feet on getting my product out in front of people until I saw one of my good friends, um, Tatis, who was also building something, and he like finished building it, and then the next day was just like posted it on Instagram with this like janky like weird green color on his story being like, I built a nap, does anyone want to try it? And I was like, crap, like that's what I need to do, that's the energy I need to do, like have, just get it out there, just put it out there, it doesn't have to be perfect. So then literally the next day I also did the same thing. I was just like posted it on Instagram, posted it on LinkedIn, um, and got like a fair amount of people actually resharing it, which was really cool. And I was really, really surprised by the amount of people who were willing to reshare it on their own personal stories and like wanted to help push it forward. Um, so that was really cool. And then, yeah, now it's just about trying to figure out how do we get repeatable growth? How do we iterate on the product? How do we make it way better? Yeah, so that's been my building process so far.
Interesting. That is pretty cool to hear. I think urgency is an important one. Could you maybe tell us a little bit about I think if I remember correctly in our first conversation, you talked about some of the small wins and how it felt to, finally see somebody reviewing your product or buying, and you can see like, oh man, that's so cool. Or you maybe bump into somebody who actually used it and you didn't, pitch them directly on using it. Can you talk about that process and what it feels like?
Yeah, I had sent out like some emails asking users for feedback, and there was this one woman who responded and she was like, your pop-up is like kind of annoying. It pops up so often. But I guess at the same time it has really helped. Like I actually was on Free People the other day and did buy something secondhand because it popped up. And so that was really, really cool. I mean, it was like a little painful to hear, right? But like, oh, your pop-up's kind of annoying. But it was really, really cool to be like, wow, it's doing the thing. Like it's doing the thing that I wanted it to do, that I built it to do. It's helping people like participate in more of a circular economy. That is really, really cool. Um, and yeah, I don't know how else to describe it other than like it just felt really cool. Um,
Do you feel like when those tiny things happen that it just really like energizes you to just go further? Do you ever feel yourself running out of energy? And like, what do you do mentally to kind of keep yourself going? Because obviously being a solo founder is notoriously difficult. So could you talk about that?
Yeah, it is really energizing. Honestly, like when people get excited, um, there have definitely been a bunch of moments where people are like, I love your product. This is so cool. This is exactly what I wanted. It is extremely energizing. I think humans are just really, really care about connecting and community and like just like harmonizing with each other for lack of a better term. And so like it is energizing for me to feel like other people really care about this thing that I also care a lot about. It is really, really hard to keep motivated. I had a really difficult time staying motivated with No Waste Club. But it's been a lot easier with Disco, I think just because it makes a lot more sense um business wise and just like how it fits into today's market and people's human behaviors. So I think that is a lot more motivating. And then there are definitely times that I get really, really, really burnt out. And during those times I usually try to just stop working and just like stop working, do some writing, um, or do some self-care. Like the other day, I told myself, like, take the entire afternoon and evening off. You're not allowed to work. And then I just watched TV, painted my nails, and colored in this coloring book. And then the next day I was ready to go again. It was great. There was actually a moment while I was doing that where I was like, I think I could work. I think I could go back to work tonight. And then I was like, nope, you said you weren't allowed to work, so you're not allowed to work. And then I think that was actually the right call.
Mhm. Yeah, I think that's quite interesting. I mean, it's very difficult, especially if you feel like you're racing the clock. It's like if you're really motivated what you're doing, you feel like you have to keep going all the time. But if you do that to a certain extent, you can't keep going, right? So you need to take the break. That's really helpful to hear. Um, could you talk about a little bit if you're open to discussing it, the process of how you raise? Because my understanding, if you're willing, if
Mm-hmm.
you're fine sharing this, is you raise from friends and family, and then you kind of give use that to give your initial go around. Could you talk about that process?
Mm-hmm.
Because I've never had anybody on who's been able to speak to that level.
Yeah, definitely. I Yeah, let me see. How did that work? It was a little while ago. I think the process was, if I'm thinking back, it was like I had talked to other friends who had raised before about their experiences with VCs, with angels, uh, with friends, and I think it just like made a lot more sense to do friends and family for the first round. And I think it was just, like I think it just felt like a safer space for me, honestly. Like if I was very new to entrepreneurship, and so it felt honestly just kind of scary to talk to like angels and VCs who know what they're doing, and like yeah, and I felt like friends and family were it was just like a much safer space, and I was nervous to ask friends and family. I don't know how I got over that nervousness. I think I kind of just forced myself to do it.
Hmm.
And so what I did was I just like wrote a little blurb. I wrote like an ask. I think I went on AngelList and wrote like a little like kind of essay about what I was doing and what I was trying to go for. And just like wrote like a huge list, like a spreadsheet of list of friends and family that I wanted to reach out to, and just kind of like eating your vegetables, just like force myself to DM every single one of them, like 10 at 10, 20 a day. And it's just like, I don't want to do this, but I'm going to do it. And then it actually, um, I thought I was gonna be a lot more, I thought it was gonna be like a lot more emotionally like stressful and resentful than I expected. But I surprisingly, really pleasantly surprisingly wasn't. Like I think even some friends were like, hey, I'm not in a like I just don't invest. I don't feel comfortable investing. Um, I hope you don't resent me. And it was actually like surprisingly like, no, I don't resent you. Every person's in their own spot. Some people are very used to investing. And so, those people were very readily like ready to invest. And then some people are not used to it. And some people just don't have funds, or some people are just not interested in the space. And every person is different. And so it was surprisingly easy to not take it personally. Uh, I don't know if that's helpful, but that's
I
kind
think
of
it is. I
was
think it
my
is
experience.
interesting. I'd be keen if you have any learnings from that, because obviously there may not be necessarily a whole lot of structure to it. You're not exactly paying lawyers, I'm assuming, unless you have a friend or a lawyer in the
Mhm.
family, maybe. So how do
No.
you go about, just this pitch? And was this after you had determined that you wanted to do disco, or was it prior to figuring that all out? And what are some of the social contracts that you kind of put in place with these people to ensure that, hey, just because we are um you're investing in me, I don't
Mm-hmm.
want this to soil our relationship as friends or family.
Yeah, definitely. I don't have a lawyer in the family. I kind of what did I sorry, can you repeat the last
Yeah, the last
question?
part of the question is really on how did you manage, or how, if you have any learnings from it, how you would do it differently. How would you manage making sure that you maintain these relationships with these people, right? Because they're investing in
Oh,
you.
I
If things
gotcha.
go south, you don't want them to be upset that you didn't succeed at your venture or whatever. So like, how did you go about
Mm.
doing that up front to make sure that, hey, I don't want there to be any like sauerkraut left on the table next time we see
Oh
each
yeah,
other?
yeah. Yeah, that's a good question. I don't know if I said this explicitly to every single person, but I think there were definitely some people where I was like, "Hey, I really do not want you to invest if you don't feel comfortable doing it." And so I really want to preserve like our friendship there. And also like if you do like my intention is to like, generate revenue and like have like a return for you someday. But I think this is also just like a cause that is valuable and like a good cause. And I think what I said was like basically you should not expect to get this back though. like like this is very, very risky. I'm pretty positive I explicitly said to every single person like this is very, very risky. Please do not invest if you don't feel comfortable losing all of this money that you're investing.
No, that's fair. I mean, that's fair. I think that's the mindset that angels, I mean, maybe not professional angels, but I think that's the mindset that you have to have, especially because otherwise it gets very awkward at, Thanksgiving dinner every time, like, how's it going with that thing? I'm still
Yeah, yeah.
hoping for my 5 grand back, So that's
Yeah.
interesting. I think that's helpful. I mean, obviously, I think it probably can be daunting. I've never been in that situation, but I can imagine. So I appreciate you sharing that. Um, any other, I guess, thoughts? Because from your perspective, you talk about being a solo founder. So being a solo founder, being a female solo founder in the climate space, what has your
Mm.
experience been, and things that you wish that you want to see improved, or recommendations you have to other people going through this as well, in the same kind of shoes as you?
I guess I can't really tell if being like female and solo is different than being non-female and solo, but I guess it can be pretty daunting to like see that there aren't, like not being represented. And I do think that like there's a lot of imposter syndrome on like for everyone, but unfortunately, especially for women. And I kind of like, I guess like my main thoughts are just like, nobody knows what they're doing. And like just to keep that in mind. And I think what that means is like basically anybody can do this, especially if you have growth mindset, because then it kind of just doesn't matter where you start. Um, and like as long as you're growing really quickly, like yeah, I think that's the main thing. And then in climate, it can be really, I think just like being having a background in software and like being so software and tech related is actually the more scary thing. Being in climate personally, it's just like everyone's doing hard tech, everyone's like really deep into science um, and it's like really, really cool stuff, but like I don't really understand it super, super well and trying to learn as quickly as possible. But um, yeah, I think like software solutions aren't quite as prevalent, but they're definitely growing. Um, but yeah, I think that's the main challenge is just like, can we speak the same language? Can we still collaborate? Can we still talk? And the answer is yes. So I think like it is scary at first, but I think just like being honest, being like, oh, I don't really know anything about, solar energy and like I don't really know a ton about the grid. Can you please explain it to me? Um, is like it just like goes a long way and people are really, really happy to just like explain it.
Mhm. Yeah, I think that's an interesting observation. I mean, from myself, I'm also somebody who's non-technical, even further, even less technical than you are. And learning about this stuff, talking to people, maybe it's because they're talking to me on a show and they're trying to explain to other people, but usually they're pretty chill. And I say, hey, you basically have to explain this to me like I'm your grandma, and I don't have any clue how anything works. So I have found climate to be a pretty welcoming community generally, but I
Hmm,
can I,
hmm.
I can share the sentiment of being intimidated by it. It's just like you've got so many people with PhDs and just crazy
Oh yeah.
things, and you're like, wow, like I don't have that. I don't know if I can, hold a conversation with you. Just like, can I keep on your level, right? I heard somebody
Yeah.
recently compare they were talking about Balaji and him going on the Joe Rogan podcast, and they said it's like a Toyota Camry and a Ferrari next to each other. I don't want to be the Camry. I want to be able to keep up. But anyways, very good. I think this is pretty great. Maybe just final thoughts for what you're doing in the future, what you're excited for in particular with your own venture, and then generally speaking, any asks to the audience.
Yeah, I mean, I'm pretty excited for where disco is going. Right now it's closed, but I hope to essentially be like the circular economy Amazon. I mean, I think there's so much opportunity in resale, in repair, in upcycling. Just like we have so many opportunities for that, and I would love to see just the world come together. And I think it's like honestly, like repair and upcycling especially are really, really fun and creative. So I'm like excited for the world's energy, like creative energy to come out of something like a circular economy. And then I think that like what I'm excited for in general is just like and asks for the audience is just to stay open-minded. There's like a ton of really cool startups in the sustainability space, and it touches every single industry. It's not just hard sciences, it's not just software tech, it's like e-commerce, it's like so many different industries. Um, and like it's really, really cool stuff. So I think just asking the audience to stay open-minded to like potentially joining climate companies would be my ask. And then also try out Disco is kind of my main ask for us. You just go to usedisco.io and try it out and let me know what you think.
Awesome. Very good. This has been really fun. I appreciate you coming on. I do think this is, you mentioned maybe some of these answers aren't that great, but I think these are actually very good. I think it's very good for early stage people to hear this. Um, I don't know, maybe I don't speak for other people, but I do feel that there are a lot of people who are uncertain of joining and doing this thing when they have an idea, they want to be part of it. They may not find a role in another company to work at, and they might be intimidated too. So I appreciate you sharing that, and I think this is something that we need more of because everybody likes to look up to these founders who are doing great things and doing being looking very successful, at least from the media perspective. But it always reminds me to think about how Steve Jobs was an absolute asshole and completely blew it, but eventually, in hindsight, everybody kind of worships him, maybe for better or for worse. But anyways, very very much appreciate you coming on the show. Thank you so much.
Thanks so much.